This video is Anus Man approved. Thanks, Anus Man.
So a couple things real quick. I forgot to mention in the video that Polygon was funded by Microsoft. They got $750,000, and they gave Nino Kuni, what was it, a 6 or a 6.5? They also gave The Last of Us a 7.5, and they banned Reality Pales from their website when he called them out on their BS. So without further ado, let's get on to the video.
Alright, what's going on, guys? I'm rated DNF, tested positive for swag. Now I'm here with Yewles, and we're going to talk about basically how Microsoft is ruining the gaming industry, how biased journalism just is screwed up, basically. So, what's going on, dude?
Oh, I'm just miserable. Why? People trashed on me for what I said, and now some of them are really mad at me now for being right on certain things. And they didn't listen to me before. Now they feel like unprepared Boy Scouts, and, well, there are no merit badges for you today.
So, the first thing that I want to talk about is Arthur Gies of Polygon. So, last week, a lot of people probably saw he had a podcast where he basically said that the PS4 has no effing games, which first off, I find it kind of embarrassing that this is a so-called professional journalist who's gone about swearing about other companies. But aside from that, the funny thing is, he was talking about how the PS4 just keeps pumping out garbage indie games. And the funniest thing is Anthony Gallegos of Zombie was in the podcast with him, and they had just released a game on the PS4, an indie game. And so Gallegos basically defended the PS4, saying it's not all garbage, and Gies was like, no, it's just garbage indie games, no games coming out for PS4. The funniest thing is how he didn't even care that he was insulting somebody on his own podcast. And aside from that, news came out that Quantum Break just started full production, and it's not coming out in 2014. So that means that for the Xbox One...
We just talked really about Microsoft coming out with game after game after game this year. Yeah, because a possible Halo Master Chief Collection is just what we need.
Exactly. He criticized
library.
He criticized The Last of Us Remastered, and he's not going to bring up the fact that the only two games we know of for the Xbox One this holiday season are Sunset Overdrive and the Halo Remastered Collection. It's a complete joke.
I just want to touch on this for a second. I never thought I'd see the day where a game like Halo 1 would get not one, but two full-on HD remakes. People crapped on me because I missed backwards compatibility. But this is okay. Well,
I just think it's hilarious.
It's not me to blame, is it?
Exactly. And it's funny how when Sony started the PS2 HD remakes, they did it to drive up hype for PS3 versions of those same games. So like God of War Collection, and then God of War 3 came out a few months later. Sly Cooper, same thing. Specifically with Jak and Daxter, they were going to make Jak 4, but it turns out they decided to do The Last of Us. So it was pretty much the same thing there as well. And they didn't make a big deal about the HD collections for the PS2 to the PS3, but a lot of Sony haters criticized Sony for making them, even if they weren't advertising them that much. Now, what do you see? Nintendo making a Zelda HD remake and bundling it with their new console. You've got Microsoft bundling 4 Halo games.
Who was doing HD remakes first? I remember when the 360 launched. The two most prominent games I can remember were the HD remasters, in 2005, mind you, of games like Joust and Gauntlet. Classic 8-bit arcade games enhanced to HD graphics.
Man. One more thing I want to say real quick about... Oh, go ahead. You can go ahead.
No, please.
Okay. So, about Arthur Gies, and about Polygon in general, but specifically first about Gies. When I first got on the internet to be more active, I guess you'd say, that was a few months before Crysis 2 came out, and I was hyped for Crysis 2 for like ever. Like I really wanted to play that. And I remember when Geese reviewed it on IGN, he docked the PS3 version points, and he said that it looks much worse than the 360 version. Now, I believed him because I was basically new to the internet when it comes to being more than just a casual viewer. And then, the thing is, though, is that I was subscribed to Koopa and Skilled87 on YouTube, and they both said that the PS3 version looks pretty much the same, just a slightly lower resolution. So, and Koopa even got the PS3 version of Crysis 2. So I did the same thing, and it turns out the game looked pretty much the same on both platforms. Lens of Truth and Digital Foundry proved Geese wrong, and I mean, from that point on, I've just questioned everything the guy has said. And it's continued on with Polygon, where they recently said about the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition that frame rate does not improve gameplay if there's a higher frame rate, which is a lie, you know? And then, obviously, Yewles, you made a video last year about Arthur Gies and Adam Sessler about the God of War Ascension Bros Before Hoes, where they basically lied about that, too.
Oh, blatantly lying about a scene that happens in a game that doesn't match what he's describing. Which is funny considering previously when he was with G4, he gave God of War 3 a 5 out of 5, and that contained a scene that was more akin to what he was actually describing. There was a scene where there was a priestess to Poseidon. Kratos manhandled the woman and attached and to a lever to hold the door open. When you go through the door, it closes and turns the tied-up woman into mincemeat. Nothing but blood and body parts. And Kratos didn't care. That's a hell of a lot more extreme than a first-person perspective beatdown of a woman who's actually a monster, and as you're still beating on this basically corrupt cop, if you will, she's laughing in your face the whole time, and it turns out she was an illusion.
Yep. That's the funniest thing, is that it didn't actually happen, you know?
It didn't happen, and then it led to a trophy. Thanks to him, it caused Sony to concede and change the name of the trophy because of him. And when I saw Sony kowtow and do something like that, I made my announcement that I wasn't going to buy the game, and I didn't.
And the funniest thing, one of the funniest things about that situation is that Tomb Raider came out around the same time, and they have a trophy where if you kill 40 guys with a shotgun, you get the Widowmaker trophy, which nobody talked about.
Oh, yes, the Widowmaker.
It's unbelievable, the hype. And the other thing, in Grand Theft Auto 5, you can go to a strip club and you're encouraged to put your hands on strippers. And Sessler didn't want to talk about that.
You're encouraged to molest women. There are cutscenes of just having your way with a woman who quote unquote wants more for drugs.
It's just insane.
But I get to find out why.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like when God of War 3 came out, that was at a time when the PS3, it was still being bashed like crazy, you know? Even at that time, Bayonetta was much worse on the PS3 than on the Xbox 360, so there was still there was no parity there, you know what I mean? And in general, the PS3, it was just starting to get more positive attention at the time.
Oh, but that was perfectly fine.
I know.
Because you had a game that was almost at twice the frame rate on the PS4, and the Xbox One version actually had to downscale at times dynamically to 900p.
Which game was it?
But that's okay. Oh, and let's not forget about the drastic alterations in character models. Different colored hair, different.
For which game are you talking about?
Tomb Raider.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't know about this? No. The damage control was absolutely disgusting.
And I feel like I said, that was with God of War 3. It was at a time where the PS3 really didn't have that much positive attention, and so they just gave the game the score that it deserved. But now, with God of War Ascension, that was at a time when the PS4 was just announced, and things were turning around big time. You know, so I feel like that was their way of, like, demonizing Sony at that time.
It's still demonizing Sony.
Yep. Anyway, so I want to hear your thoughts on Forza's downgrade, because you've got Xbots on YouTube like Arsenal who threatened to block me from their channel for calling them out on their BS about Forza being severely downgraded.
Well, you can see it for yourself. The original build that was shown at E3 had fully 3D crowds. It had fully 3D trees. It had higher quality assets all around. Textures, reflections, everything. Now the retail build, you have 2D crowds that don't even move, and they now consist of crew members of Turn 10. How annoying is it when you see five damn green walls in a row?
That's embarrassing.
On top of that, you got a next-gen console. You're still using pre-baked lighting. You're still using fixed time of day and weather, but you are using a next-gen console that's supposed to be more improved in every way. You downgrade your shadow scrolling and your reflections to half the frame rate? I'm looking at everything that's reflected at 30 frames per second, trying to catch up with everything else going at 60 frames? How? How is that even possible?
Oh, man. I want to hear your thoughts. What do you have to say about the DX12 supposed boost to the Xbox One?
Oh, the same DirectX 12 that not everybody paid attention to when it came to hearing about all the details. Oh, we're going to have 50% increase in CPU usage. No, you're getting 50% increase of a single thread in multi-core architecture. That's number one. Number two, DirectX 12 is now doing what other platforms have been doing for years now. DirectX 12 is now doing what it should have been doing back in 1998. Low-level access. This should have been a given. This should have been done forever ago. Not only that, but the truth about DirectX 12 is to only assist PCs with technologies that's already being used on the Xbox One. DirectX 12 isn't really going to have as much of an effect on Xbox One as you think, because the technology is already there and it's already being used at launch.
And see, the funny thing is, I've seen so many people get angry at Jeremy Conrad on Twitter for saying just that, and these people still don't believe it. The funny thing is how Microsoft has been lying to
They
these
don't even
people.
want to believe the fact that, oh, it's next gen only. They announced it for the 360 as well. It's been over.
It's laughable. These people will believe anything Microsoft tells them. And these people doesn't just include Xbox fans, it includes members of the media. When you see people like Ryan McCaffrey of IGN begging Phil Spencer to host E3, I mean, why should we trust what he has to say? especially when he says that you should believe the hype about Titanfall when it didn't last more than a month. I mean, this.
Oh, forget about that. Forget about that. I'll tell you about a bigger incident. Let me tell you a story of a developer studio squaring off against a single message board dweller just to keep their sales. Now, it was leaked some time ago that Titanfall was 720p. And the guy that leaked it made a big deal out of it. Respawn retaliated that the game was going to be a higher resolution and the texture assets was going to be increased. So, when it came to launch, 1408 by 792, plus increasing the assets on the Xbox One to near max levels on the PC, managed to drop the frame rate performance of the game to indescribably low levels for a game that's trying to keep 60 frames per second.
And the funny,
From, quote unquote, the people who know 60 frames per second on console.
and it's funny how the only review that I saw talk about that was Jeff Gerstmann's, I believe it was. Nobody else talked about it and said people would just laugh it off.
Except there was a secondary gameplay footage from someone else that showed the frame rate drops. And people wanted to ignore that. Oh, how do you enjoy the PC version of Titanfall now? Now that you just paid full price for this game and just lost 2 modes.
Yeah, I saw it. Capture the Flag was one of them. Like, that's a standard multiplayer mode. It's laughable.
People wanted to trash on Sony for having a console that dropped features. Where's the outrage for Respawn for having a game that drops features?
Especially when it's online only.
Yes.
I mean, and I really don't even know what to say. Nobody talks about this stuff. You don't see people saying this. Instead, it's like, oh, doom and gloom for Sony. They're losing so much money. Why don't you tell us that?
Yeah. Right after EA just cut off the online server for 50 games last week. Or was it 2 weeks ago?
And then tell us that thing that you told me a couple weeks ago about how much money Sony really has.
Oh, God. They have well over $100 billion. Fucking kept away. Fucking from over the years. People forget about how big their war chests really are. I mean, this is a company that's been around since World War II. The companies like Sony and Nintendo, they've been around for a long time. They've managed to keep money in other places. They are not going away. The truth is, none of these companies are. None of these big conglomerates that have been around forever are suddenly going to disappear now. You had Sharp that just lost like a couple of years ago. Big lost $9 billion. They're still around.
Man.
Huge loss. They're still around. Meanwhile, the childishness of who's going away first forces people to turn off their brains to the realities of how long these companies have actually been around. I mean, and now you have big acquisitions going on like crazy. You got Facebook getting Oculus for $2 billion, YouTube getting Twitch for $1 billion, and now the biggest one I just heard, the biggest one, AT&T wants DirecTV.
Oh yeah.
For $52 billion.
Another thing is, specifically about Sony, they wouldn't have bought Gaikai if they were in such a terrible situation. They wouldn't be in talks about buying Radiant Dawn, and Quantic Dream if they were in such a dire situation.
Let's not forget the Renaissance plant that they now own. You know, the same factory that makes the embedded DRAM for the Wii U? Yeah, Sony owns that now.
Man. And another thing about how specifically the Xbox One is a last-gen console in my eyes. Tell us about Okami, because I made a video about this a few months ago, and you were the one that sent me the information. The Xbox One is
about the internal resolution being 3840 by 2160. You have but don't worry. What was that game that just came out? The 2D game, Child of Eden.
Oh, Child of I can't remember. I think
Child of Light.
Yeah.
Well, it finally came out in an oversampled resolution of 1440p on both consoles, PS4 and Xbox One. Let alone Okami, what was the first console game to actually put out that resolution? Whoa! 2560 by 1440.
At the beginning of last gen, or like beginning to middle of last gen, I guess.
2007 game was pumping out 720p with 4 times super sampling anti-aliasing, 2560 by 1440.
Meanwhile, you got Xbox One games that are running at 720p. Like, it's embarrassing. And then
and Witcher 3 just got a delay. After the rumors came out of the PS4 version being 900p and the Xbox One version being 720p. Doesn't this sound?
Man. And then you also told me something else about how the Xbox One is basically driving up electrical bills because they have 3 fans in the system. One in the system, one in the connector.
I'm not the big console fan that goes in slow mo, right? But when I found out about the additional 2 fans,
and then one's in the power brick.
I shared stuff. The first one, there's the power brick, the external power supply. You know, basically the extra weapon you want to use to protect your house with. That has a fan. Try to let that sink into your head. The damn power brick has its own fan. I thought that was I broke my jaw. It fell so hard it broke. I couldn't talk for a week. But then where the third fan was, I started to see why they now have a $400 Xbox coming out next month. A fan side Connect.
Connect is the biggest joke ever. I think it's funny how these journalists basically, like, first off, when Microsoft lied last year and showed all their games running on PCs, high-end PCs instead of Xbox Ones, that was laughable, and I didn't really see any big site report on that.
Oh, Xbox One hardware. It's all there.
And then now with the Kinect, like, people hyped it up so much at first. You can do this, you can do that. Nobody cared. And now all these journalists are just silent about it. The thing that annoys me more than anything is, like we talked about earlier, these people are so quick to jump on, oh, it's all doom and gloom for Sony, but they will not criticize Microsoft. I remember Yumi and Tristan were in a chat last year. I believe it was at the Xbox One reveal. And he played for us. Some people, I think it was on IGN, talking about how they'd pay $1,000 for an Xbox One. Where's...
Well, I know one person that did. His name was Solid Rev.
That was funny. Man. But I mean, like, seriously, like, where's the unbiased journalism here? You know, and the funny thing is, when we point out this stuff, they just label us as being haters, and, you know, a lot of us are conspiracy theorists and stuff like that.
Anyone. I've been a fan of Sony Computer Entertainment for almost 19 years. But I have to call out Sony on bullshit. And people crap on me for hating on the PS4.
Yeah.
People unfriended me, trashed on me. I had one person make a threat on me. Like, fucking internet. Seriously.
And the thing is like, obviously I joke around a lot on YouTube too, but I criticized the Naughty Dog Left Behind DLC for The Last of Us. Initially, when I saw that Ubisoft was making Assassin's Creed 4 so quickly after 3, when my initial playthrough of 3 was kind of, I thought it was good but not great, I criticized them for it. And then, you know, I make these videos telling what I want. I mean, the Splinter Cell Blacklist video I made, that got like 20,000 views. And I am a Ubisoft fanboy. Like, I've made that known. But it's not like I don't criticize them. Same with Sony. And these developers, it's like they're, or not these developers, these journalists, it's like they're afraid to call out Microsoft.
And yet, when I have the courage to call out my favorite company, I get lambasted for it.
It's just wild.
I get crucified on it. I mean, it's just bizarre.
So one more thing I wanted to talk about is Major Nelson always talked about how many people are on this game on Xbox Live and this game and that game. And now that Xbox Live is pretty much irrelevant in most people's eyes, PSN has really taken over, you don't really see stats like that anymore. And I wanted you to tell us, because you're a big Gran Turismo fan, how many people were on Gran Turismo 5?
AJ was having hundreds of thousands of people online. I mean, the tremendous amount of people online for Gran Turismo has been astounding, especially for a console game. I mean, people forget, like, for every Halo, I mean, there's a Gran Turismo doing war. I mean, and I haven't even talked about Nintendo.
Oh,
Nintendo
yeah.
with their 35 million sales of Mario Kart. I mean, they're just big. It's just that you have to realize that there's always a bigger. Don't say you're the biggest when there's always somewhere out there that's bigger. That's the truth. There's always somewhere. I mean, I hate to quote Star Wars. There's always a bigger fish.
Anyway, that's pretty much what I've got on my list. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, speaking of Nintendo, let's have a moment of silence for the currently apparent passing of Ubisoft support for the Wii U.
Oh, yeah.
No Far Cry 4, no Assassin's Creed anymore, apparently. Let's see what Mario Kart does for the life of this console.
Yeah. And honestly, I hate to beat a dead horse. Like, I've been making fun of the Wii U for years, but I mean, at the end of the day, Assassin's Creed is one of the biggest series in gaming. Each game, it's a yearly series, and each game sells like 10 million copies. And when Ubisoft's biggest game, one of the biggest games in gaming, is no longer coming to your console, I mean, well, what else is there to say?
I know real well. Please come back! Please! We'll buy it now! We promise we'll buy it now! Come on! We'll buy it now! Come on! Look, all those times we said we didn't want it, we were just joking! Come on!
And it's funny.
Really bad.
It's funny how Ubisoft brought them Zombie U, and even that, it hasn't even hit 1 million copies.
Yeah, it hit 1 million copies.
Okay, after so
But
long.
Rayman Legends.
Oh, good point, yeah.
The excuse is made. Oh, we don't want to buy it anymore because it got delayed. Well, how about your sales of Wonderful 101? That didn't get delayed.
They were hyping that up.
Look, the truth is they got mad at the fact that Rayman Legends was exclusive.
Yep.
So they made up the excuse of the game being delayed as their sole reason to no longer buy the game. What was your excuse for Wonderful 101?
Really?
your user any other that boring Mario, that boring Zelda.
I feel bad
Let
for
me-
Platinum Games because they made Wonderful 101 in that bomb. Now they're bringing Bayonetta to the Wii U, and that seems like it's not going to do too well either, comparing other sales that aren't Mario or Zelda. You know, it's like I feel
I
bad
remember
for
when
them.
someone was bragging about Bayonetta 2 because of the backlash for that becoming Wii U exclusive. Where is that game right now? Remember, that game was announced back in 2012, and we have rumors of a 2015 release date.
Man, that's like Last Guardian territory.
Almost. Almost. More like halfway there. So much crap I stopped caring about anymore because too much garbage to deal with this gen. I can now see why certain guys like Retro and X-Rasgar X are moving over to PC. So much less to deal with when it comes to bullshit. And I don't think it's much about dealing with the games. I think it has more to do with dealing with the people, the platform owners.
Yeah. Alright, so I guess that's pretty much it. I want to thank Yewles for doing this video with me. Link to his channel is in the description as well as annotations in the video. It's been in the video the entire time, so if you guys didn't see it by now, I don't know what to tell you.
Love me! Oh no!
Alright, so that's pretty much it, guys. Keep it frosty. Later.
Love